The first ray. The possessor of glory and creator of this universe is Al-Kayyum. That is, he is self-existent, eternal, and everlasting. Everything exists, continues, and remains in existence through him. If that relationship of Al-Kayyum with the universe were to be cut off for even a moment, the universe would perish. Here, I have briefly described the meaning of the name Al-Kayyum. The creator of this universe, the possessor of glory, is Al-Kayyum. The creator of this universe, that is of God, God is the creator. He created this universe. At the same time, he is the possessor of glory. When we say glory in common parlance, something like anger comes to mind. But it is not like that here. It means that the mind cannot fully comprehend or understand him. For example, the mind can understand some things, but it is not possible for it to understand or grasp God. That is, it is not possible to fully comprehend him. He is beyond the grasp and comprehension of the mind. You understand, that is, you have knowledge, but complete understanding is not possible. That is because of God's glory. Every time you understand a little more, but you can never say, this is God. The moment you say this is God, you have denied God, it is said. Because God is not that much. That is, you can say, what I know are the attributes of God. But the moment you say, God is this much, it becomes denial. Would you give me the Mesnevi? Let's read the part in the Mesnevi, because there are many attributes, names, and aspects of God that you do not yet know. What will happen to them, for example? Then you can say, my knowledge is this much, it is up to this point. But our Prophet, right? There is a hadith like this: glory be to you, we have not known you as you deserve to be known, O the known. Despite all that he knew, he still says, we have not known you as you deserve to be known. That is what the word says. For example, here it says, O beloved. If you look at God with the title of the known and recognized, he becomes unknown and denied. God is this, God forbid. If you say God is this much, God is like this, I know God, then you have not known God. If you look at God with the title of the known and recognized, he becomes unknown and denied. Then if you ask, describe what kind of God there is, if you describe, well, the God you describe cannot create this universe, so it is not that much. That much is the window that has been opened to you. Therefore, it is necessary to say, the existent is unknown. It says, his existence is definite, certain, but we do not know him fully. He is unknown to us. If one looks at God with the title of the existent is unknown, what happens? The rays of knowledge become apparent to a degree, and the absolute attributes encompassing the universe, emerging from that title, do not seem heavy, because the being we are trying to know is not a being who made this house or a being who created this tree. We are talking about the being who created the universe, right? The being who turns all the particles, all the atoms at once. We are talking about the power that created all the stars, galaxies, trillions of galaxies at once. That is, the being we are trying to know is not like knowing such a thing. Therefore, we will know him as much as we can. Otherwise, this is what it beautifully introduces here. Let's read it again here. The first ray, the possessor of glory and creator of this universe is Al-Kayyum. That is, he is self-existent, eternal, and everlasting. Everything exists, continues, and remains in existence through him. For example, we say, who wrote this, for example, this book? So-and-so master made it, Look, we attribute this to someone else, right? For example, who made this house? So-and-so master made it. Look, someone else is the maker of the house. Then that is not its own cause. Its cause is someone else, right? But for example, for humans, we can ask, who created humans? Because the cause of humans is God. God forbid. Can we ask, who created God? We cannot ask. Because God's cause is himself. He has no cause. That is called self-existent. That is, something is either self-existent from itself or from someone else. The existence of God is from himself. He is self-existent. That is, he is self-existent, eternal and everlasting. Is there anything in the universe that is self-existent? There is nothing that is self-existent because God created everything. So there is no example of a self-existent being. There are relative examples in the universe, but there is no true self-existence. It is also logically necessary that God is self-existent, because God's existence is certain. And if you attribute another cause to God, you will attribute another cause to that cause. Where will this go? It cannot go on like that. Ultimately, you cannot base it on non-existence. There must be an existence. So if there is existence, then it did not come from non-existence. So that means he exists as self-existent. That is, when you think logically, a self-existent truth is absolutely necessary. And that is God. That is, he is self-existent, eternal, and everlasting. That is, God's existence and continuity are from himself. As for all other things, the existence of all other creatures, all things exist, continue, and remain in existence through him. When we say all things, that includes particles, atoms, the material world, then animals, plants, living beings, spirit, mind, etc., angels, spiritual beings. That is, whatever there is, that is heaven, hell, that is everything other than God. After that, it becomes the universe. The existence of all of them exists and continues through him. He is the one who brings them into existence, continues them, and makes them remain in existence. For example, when we were talking with the brothers the other day, we gave the same example. For example, the light in a mirror. Where does the light in the mirror come from? From the mirror itself? No, it comes from the sun. So it is a light coming from the sun. So the continuation of the light in the mirror depends on whom? It depends on the sun. If the connection with the sun is cut off, the light disappears, right? But for example, does the sun's light come from somewhere in relation to the mirror? When you think in terms of the mirror, it doesn't come. Let's say it comes from within itself. It continues. Look now, when you think of the cause as himself, it continues. But there is light in the mirror. There is light in the mirror. But is it the mirror's own light? It is not. It shows us the light coming from the sun. That is called accidental, self-existent. Then look, for example, it is bright everywhere during the day and it is dark at night. Look, when the connection with the sun is cut off, it is dark everywhere. When it is daytime, the sun appears again. It becomes bright again. The sun's light is like it is from itself. But the light in other mirrors, the light in the seas, is from the sun. The moment that connection is cut off, it disappears. That is like that example. The existence of the entire realm of beings exists and continues through God's bringing them into existence and his existence. If the connection with God is cut off, if God withdraws the name Al-Kayyum, everything disappears in an instant, it says. It is an amazing point. All things exist through him. they continue, remain in existence, and endure. So we can think of God with His name Al-Qayyum every moment, every second. We can see the manifestations of those names in everything. If that relationship of Al-Qayyum with the universe were to be cut off for even a moment, the universe would perish. Look now, how beautiful the meaning of the name Al-Qayyum is, right? The name Al-Qayyum is the name for creating the entire universe and keeping it in existence. Then we can think of God with His name Al-Qayyum every moment, every second. We can see the manifestations of those names in everything. If that relationship of Al-Qayyum with the universe were to be cut off for even a moment, the universe would perish. And along with that self of glory, as the Glorious Qur'an states, there is nothing like Him. And along with that self of glory, as the Glorious Qur'an states, there is nothing like Him. When thinking of God, He is not like anything. Should we not liken Him to anything? We likened Him to the sun, but we should not liken Him to the sun either. It is only to explain with what is from Him and what is not from Him. Otherwise, He is not like anything. Therefore, the moment you liken Him to something, that becomes wrong. That is, there is no likeness, no equal, no similar, no partner for Him, neither in His essence, nor in His attributes, nor in His actions. That is, neither in His essence, nor in His attributes, nor in His actions. There is no likeness or example for God. There is no other like His essence. There is no other with the attributes He possesses, like infinite power, infinite knowledge. And there is no other being who performs actions and deeds like God. In fact, humans cannot even comprehend it. If a person tries to think of all that God has done at once, you cannot think of it. Our minds cannot grasp it. There is no likeness for Him, neither in His essence, nor in His attributes, nor in His actions. There is no likeness, no equal, no similar, no partner for Him. The greatness of our Prophet comes from this. That is, he informs us about the existence of such a being. He invites us to believe in such a truth. He informs us about the existence of such a being. He knows Him and introduces Him in the most beautiful way. He informs us and teaches us this great truth. That is, it is thanks to Him that we have faith, for example, right? The biggest reason for our love for our Prophet is that he informs us about the existence of God. That is, it is divine that he informs us about the existence of such a being who created this universe in this way. That is, there is no likeness for him, neither in his essence, nor in his attributes, nor in his actions. There is no equal, no similar, no partner for him. Yes, all the universe. Now, what are these actions? What are his attributes? Now he will list them. This part is very beautiful. Yes, it is impossible for there to be any likeness or similarity, any partner or equal to that sacred being who holds the entire universe with all its affairs and qualities in his grasp of lordship, and governs, administers, and nurtures it with perfect order as a house and a palace. Yes, holding the entire universe with all its affairs and qualities in his grasp of lordship. Grasp. Grasp is like the work of the hand, right? For example, you say the grasp of something. For example, you grab something. For example, you grab an animal for sacrifice and take it away. That grasp holds it. That is, you are holding it and dragging it, for example. Grasp holds it means that. God expresses a perfect holding that is such a perfect sovereignty, like a perfect holding of the entire universe with all its affairs and qualities in his grasp of lordship, and governs, administers, and nurtures it with perfect order as a house and a palace. He nurtures and administers the stars separately. He also nurtures and administers the page of the sky. He nurtures and administers the seas, the affairs of the seas, humans, animals, trees, particles. That is, in every realm, he has not left any realm unattended, right? God executes his lordship there, and this entire universe is so big, magnificent, majestic. Physical statements are nothing, but the size of the universe is said to be 13.7 billion light years. That is, if you send light from here, that is 13.7 billion light years. That is, it travels 300,000 kilometers in 1 second. You will multiply this, that is 13.7 billion light years. You will convert that into seconds. Year to day to hour to second. You will put 300,000 kilometers in place of the second. That is how they express the size of the universe right now. Is it correct or incorrect? Is that so? Of course, it is necessary to say what Ustad said. Yes, 124 billion. That is a magnitude that our minds cannot comprehend. We are talking about traveling with light for 13.7 billion years. And Senabahak constantly states, we are expanding it, enlarging it. So it is not standing still, it is still expanding. So managing and governing such a vast universe comes to him as easily as a house, as a palace. That is, creating all the particles and stars, creating a particle, is as easy for him. Therefore he exists. Yes, it is impossible for there to be any likeness or similarity, any partner or equal to that sacred being who holds the entire universe with all its affairs and qualities in his grasp of lordship and governs, administers, and nurtures it with perfect order as a house and a palace. You are going towards that direction. The stars are like that. When you come to this side, the number of atoms in a space as small as the tip of my finger is more than the number of stars. And when you go into it, and so on, there is a small realm, there is a large realm. So he governs all of them with order. So such a being cannot have any likeness or similarity, any partner or equal. It is impossible. So who do we believe in? Whose servants are we? We believe in the existence of such a being, and we are his servants, right? Yes. A being to whom the creation of stars comes as easily as particles to him. Yes. A being to whom the creation of stars comes as easily as particles, and the greatest thing is as submissive to his power as the smallest thing, and nothing prevents anything. No action prevents any action. For example, compared to our actions. For example, we cannot do another job while doing one job, right? That is, we will definitely make mistakes. We will get confused. Even if you are very talented, maybe you can do 2 or 3 things at the same time, but it is not possible to do millions, trillions of things at the same time. But what does Sinabahak say? Nothing prevents anything, no action prevents any action. While creating stars in the most distant deserts of the universe, he can carry out countless activities in our world. While creating the creatures in the seas, he can also adorn the trees with fruits on the other side. In the realm of humans, he can make people talk to each other, walk. I do not know. He can send heat and light from the sun from there. That is, he can do everything that comes to your mind at the same time. None of them hinders each other. And countless individuals are present in his sight as one individual, and he hears all the voices at once. and He can fulfill the countless needs of all at once, and with the testimony of all the order and balance in the existence of the universe, nothing, no state can be outside the sphere of His will and intention. Nothing can be outside the sphere of His will and intention. That is, it is not outside the will of Allah. With the testimony of all the order and balance in the existence of the universe, nothing, no state is outside the sphere of His will and intention. From lessons like Tabir RİSALE-İ, what do we understand? Then we understand that this wise art, this insightful wisdom, cannot happen by itself. It cannot happen with the laws of nature. It cannot happen with those particles, right? There must be someone who does these, someone who creates them here. What kind of being is the one who does these, who creates them? So we are moving on from there. That is, we are now leaving that part, that is, whether this universe can exist on its own or not, and so on. We are leaving those parts. We understand there that it cannot. It is absolutely necessary that a being with infinite power and knowledge is doing it, we say. Now we are trying to know what kind of being that being is. The subject is changing. But those parts must be settled first. That is, in the realm of the perishable. That is, those three possibilities will perish. Atoms cannot exist on their own. They cannot exist with laws and so on. Those are just the names of holding laws. They are not power. They have no influence. One has to understand that. So after understanding that, after saying, okay, there must be a creator other than these, then this part comes. What kind of creator must there be to do these things? This is what it explains here. So, all the order and balance in the existence of the universe. Of course, here again, it gives support. It does not leave it empty. It immediately presents the order and harmony of the universe as evidence again. That is, with the testimony of all the order and balance in the existence of the universe, nothing, no state can be outside the sphere of His will and intention. Nothing can be outside the sphere of His will and intention. That is, it is not outside the will of Allah. With the testimony of all the order and balance in the existence of the universe, nothing. No state is outside the sphere of His will and intention. For example, we ask, why did this happen like this? Why is the shape of the apple like this? Why is the shape of the pear like this? Why is the bird like this? Allah wanted it that way. That is Allah's will. His manifestation is like this. What is the wisdom in it? That is another matter. So why does a person have two eyes? Allah wanted it that way. He wanted it that way. That is how He decreed it. But of course, since He is the judge, He has decreed the most correct thing, the most accurate thing. It is also necessary to investigate His wisdom. But in everything, it means that Allah's will is present. Look, with the testimony of all the order and balance in the existence of the universe, nothing, no state can be outside the sphere of His will and intention, while not being in any place, being present with His power and knowledge in every place and every location. So is Allah everywhere or nowhere? Some say nowhere. Some say everywhere. Everywhere? How? And so on. Look, it expresses it here. While not being in any place, in terms of His essence, but in manifestation, He is everywhere. Look, nowhere. While not being in any place. He created the universe later anyway. Can He be inside the universe? God forbid, of course not. And what does Muhammad say? That is, it says, those who give probability to things like incarnation have no share in the knowledge of God. That is, they have not benefited at all, it says. That is, those who lean toward the doctrine of incarnation, it says. Does he have no share in the knowledge of God? Has he not perceived anything at all? Has he not smelled anything at all? That is, it means that nothing is impossible upon impossible. That is, it is so in terms of his essence. But the manifestation of those names and attributes is visible everywhere, because there is order and harmony everywhere. While not being in any place, being present with his power and knowledge in every place and every location, and while everything is infinitely distant from him, he is a being of Hay and Kayyum and possessor of glory, who can be infinitely close to everything. This is also mentioned in the 16th word. Verses like, I am closer to him than his jugular vein, show infinite closeness. It says, are the words available? The words have not arrived. Let us take the words. There, for example, some verses it says, say that he is close, and some verses say that he is distant. How will we combine these with their names? There is a question. Look, let me read those verses. The third ray. O excessive self with excessive desires, you say, بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. And ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد. Like verses show the infinite nearness of God. So it says, I am closer than your jugular vein. What does the dominion, the inner truth of things is in my hand mean? I have grasped everything by the forehead, and so on. That is, with such simple meanings, the verses show the infinite nearness, that is, the infinite closeness of God, and unto him you will be returned, to the 1,000 angels. And the hadith that states, Janab Haq is behind 70,000 veils. And truths like Miraj show our infinite distance, that is, our distance from him. I would like an explanation that will bring this obscure secret closer to understanding, he says. Both close and far. How does that happen? It explains it there. It is necessary to read that part as well. And while everything is infinitely distant from him, he is a being of Hay and Kayyum and possessor of glory, who can be infinitely close to everything, of course. He has no likeness, no equal, no partner, no minister, no opposite, no rival in any way, and it is impossible for him to have. So if a person likens him to such things, God forbid, that is impossible, it is wrong. That is, you are giving examples from the universe for the thing you are likening him to. Can that ever be the same as God? Of course not. Therefore, it becomes denial. We are talking about a being who can do all this universe, all these activities, right? Can he have any likeness? Of course not. Only his sacred attributes can be viewed in the form of parables and representations. All the representations and comparisons in RİSALE-İ Nur are of this kind of parable and representation. So, such an unparalleled and necessary existent and immaterial and transcendent from makan and indivisible and unfragmentable in every way, immutable and unchangeable, a sacred being who is beyond the possibility of need and weakness. Look, how many things have we listed? So such an unparalleled being, that is, Janab Haq is a being without equal, unparalleled, without equal. Then the necessary existent. What does the necessary existent mean? Is there a place in Mektubat that explains the necessary existent? In this 20th letter, there is a place that explains the necessary existent like this, right? The creator of this universe is the necessary existent. That is, his existence is self-existent, eternal, everlasting. His non-existence is impossible. His perishing is impossible. And he is the most firmly established, the most fundamental, the most powerful, the most perfect of the layers of existence. The other layers of existence are like a very weak shadow compared to his existence. Here it also explains the necessary existence, right? The creator of this universe is the necessary existent. That is, his existence is self-existent, eternal, everlasting. His non-existence is impossible. His perishing, becoming non-existent is impossible. He is the most firmly established, the most fundamental, the most powerful, the most perfect of the layers of existence. The other layers of existence are like a very weak shadow compared to his existence. And his existence is so necessary, so firmly established, and so real. The existence of contingent beings is so light and weak that many experts like Muhyiddin ibn Arabi have reduced the other layers of existence to the level of illusions and imagination. They have said, there is no existent but him. That is, compared to the existence of the necessary being, other things should not be called existence. They do not deserve the title of existence. They have judged. Yes. Of course, it is not easy to understand everything like this in an instant, but with each reading, with each repetition, it will be more engraved in our minds. That thing called reading again and again is that anyway, right? It will constantly develop. So such an unparalleled and necessary existent and immaterial. That is, Janab Haq has no connection with this material existence that we call matter. That is, as an existence, as an essence, he is immaterial, transcended from makan. For example, things have a makan, but Janab Haq is transcended from makan, indivisible and unfragmentable in every way, immutable and unchangeable, a sacred being who is beyond the possibility of need and weakness. Some of the misguided people who attribute the rules of divinity to some of his creatures by imagining a part of his manifestations that manifest in the pages of the universe and the layers of existence as the same sacred being, have attributed some of the works of that possessor of glory to nature. For example, in this 20th letter, it says that the creation of the divine power in the universe, then he creates so easily in such a manner that people, it says formation or formation. It says, that is, Janab Haq is doing it. Janab Haq, that is, they thought that it was happening on its own. It happens so easily that, look at this. This infinite speed and infinite ease is a definite proof and certain evidence of the perfection of the power of the Creator. While everything is easy in relation to him, in the eyes of the misguided, the formation and creation of things by the power of the Creator, which is extremely easy, has caused confusion with self-formation, which is 1,000 times impossible, he says. For example, the Big Bang Theory, he says, the first explosion, he says, the big explosion, he says, happened. All the stars came into existence, he says. Whereas there is a great creation there. There are great manifestations. Janab Haq creates the universe from nothing. He says, a dimensionless point exploded. Everything came into existence. That is, as if it happened on its own. For example, so much heat is created in the sun. The divine power creates it. For example, diffusion is happening. Diffusion is happening, something is happening. And they immediately make it seem like it is happening on its own. For example, a child in the womb is created with a manifestation. It is developing, he says, it is growing. It has completed its development. It is happening on its own. That is, from that ease, they assume that it is happening on its own, he says, whereas it is evidence of the perfection of the power. The formation and creation of things by the power of the Creator, which is extremely easy, has caused confusion with self-formation, which is 1,000 times impossible. That is because they see the coming into existence of some ordinary things as very easy. They imagine their formation as self-formation. That is, they are not being created. Perhaps they come into existence on their own. So come and look at the infinite degrees of foolishness. Makes the evidence of an infinite power evidence of his non-existence. It opens the door to infinite impossibilities. Because in that case, the attributes of perfection, such as the infinite power and encompassing knowledge that are necessary for the Creator of the universe, must be given to every creature, every particle, so that it can form itself. They explain it in such a way that otherwise a person will immediately believe. If he explains it by saying Allah, if he explains it as a manifestation, people will immediately say Allah. They immediately step in and try to cover up the matter with expressions like, it is happening on its own, but they become very ugly. That is, they become very degrading. That is, they try to explain such a thing with their nature. They become ugly, right? But of course, these have revealed the value of all the risales, that is, Alhamdulillah. Therefore, we look with the eye of truth, Alhamdulillah. Some of the misguided people who attribute the rules of divinity to some of his creatures by imagining a part of his manifestations that manifest in the pages of the universe and the layers of existence as the same sacred being, have attributed some of the works of that possessor of glory to nature.